bright and early. Hey Ford,
Hey, Ford.
Hey, Sean.
how are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
Good. I'm glad it's the end of the day.
Yeah. Have you had to field very many complaints today?
Never. It's
Never. I don't believe that.
I think people need to go back to work because there's actually been a lot of interesting things going on with trees and generators and drainage lately. So.
Well, that sounds kind of cryptic. What do you really mean, Sean?
Exactly. Exactly.
Dave, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Ford? Nice to see you.
Good. I logged on mere moments before I got your text.
Oh, great. I figured you were on your way. I just, you know me, I get a little nervous about stuff. So appreciate
Well, I cut my bike ride short just so that I wouldn't make you nervous.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. I know what a release that is at the end of the day for you.
Well, it was a shorty, but better short than none.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great.
Man,
That's
so
wonderful.
how what Carla's gonna know whether we have anybody online, right?
We have 11 guests already.
You're kidding me.
No, we got 11 people
Oh my
listening,
God, so
listening to us right now.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, okay. Well, all right then. Better than a town council meeting.
That's right. That's right.
Cool. Cool.
So I think we're just about a minute away from 5 o'clock.
Right.
So yeah, we're getting ready to go on our very maiden voyage with Open Time. That's great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The other thing that's kind of neat is I'm looking at our guest list, and I know almost everybody because we're such a small town. So it's kind of a nice way to have for us to have some engagement outside of a council meeting. So
Yeah, way better.
yeah.
Although who knows, I may live to eat those words.
I hope not.
I hope not to. Okay.
All right, we're up to 14 attendees now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy. So are they all going to be on screen?
No, they're going to be listening, and then when we have time for them to ask question and answers, they'll raise their hand. So this
All right.
is just like a council meeting in that respect.
Okay, that's good. Well, why don't we launch? 5
Sounds
o'clock.
good. Sounds good.
So we live?
We are live. We're
right.
live with now our 14 guests, and we're ready to roll. So I'll hand it over to the host.
That would be me.
That would be-
Hi, everybody. You know who I am, but I don't know who you are. But nonetheless, I welcome you and thank you for joining us on our maiden voyage of Open Time with me, the mayor, and valuable members of staff. We've thought that given the restrictions of face-to-face contact that the COVID era has foisted upon us, that some communication certainly is better than none. And Zoom seems to be the easy way to do it these days. It's not as good as face-to-face live communication, all of those nonverbal methods that we all rely on to really read what's going on with one another are less available by Zoom. But it's also better than nothing. And I think you all are going to be just on the phone. So I guess my comments about Zoom may be a little inappropriate. I'm not sure. I'm starting just like Sean and Dave are, and you too. So we'll just kind of have to play it by ear and see how things go. My intent in the way that we do this is to provide information that'll update people about what's going on COVID-wise, but I don't want to just restrict it to that. I'd really like to have this be like the promotional thing said, open time, and open means open. So that means anything goes. There's no agenda. It's freer than on a town council deal. I mean, I'm going to exercise some executive control. So if you repeat yourself, or you're going on, and your behavior is a little off, I'll let you know that I think it's a little off, and that I'm going to restrict you if you don't modify it a little bit. But that's about as heavy-handed I'll be. Otherwise, I'll be available, as will our Dave Donnery, our town manager, and Sean Condry, our director of public works, to receive feedback, answer questions, try to provide information, and otherwise be useful about what's going on in San Anselmo, and particularly at this time where things are pretty strange. So Sean is going to be talking about what's going on construction-wise, what's opening up construction-wise, what's happening with the demolition downtown, and then also talk about whether or not upcoming in the summer months, what we want to do and what people think about closing down San Anselmo Avenue on the weekends and opening it up to restaurants and everything else, so that there's a better access. It's pretty hard just with the current COVID rules of that are relatively tight. And provided that, and I'll make this pitch now, is that as the shelter-in-place rules ease up, the requirements ease up, it doesn't mean that the pathogen, that the bug, that the COVID virus goes someplace else. It's here among us. So we got to we should up our game with respect to what the other methods we have of preventing contamination. And so that's wearing a mask and having good hand hygiene and maintaining the physical distance of at least 6 feet. I guess the last thing that I want to talk about is what is the respect that I have for the citizens of Marin in general, but particularly the Ross Valley, and in the Ross Valley, San Anselmo, and Fairfax. I don't know how many of you have found the surveillance area on the county website that provides a geographical depiction that indicates what the infection numbers are and the death numbers are geographically in Marin. San Anselmo and Fairfax are bunched together. For weeks, for about 3 weeks, it was just at 14. Now I think it's gone up 1 in terms of contamination, but no deaths. And that's because a lot of people are very respectful and mindful. Wear masks, pay attention to the distancing. Not everybody does. It's frustrating for those of us who do to see people that are mindless or just disregard and blow it off. But the better we set a positive example, the safer we'll be. And hopefully the better the peer group pressure will be able to apply on miscreants that need to get a better clue. So with those comments, I'm going to turn over to our town manager, Dave Donnery. And again, thank you so much for dialing in, and I look forward to hearing your questions and comments and discussion in a little bit. Dave, it's you.
Thanks, Board. Just regarding the comments, I think, if you've used Zoom, there's a little raise your hand function. We're going to dedicate a good portion of these community forums to answering questions, but we are going to try to get through our content before we do that. So I appreciate those of you who are ready to ask a question, but I think let's get through just some of the basic information that we want to share with you before we get into that section. So what I really want to key on right now is some of the work that our Economic Development Committee has been doing. We have what we call an EDC, and it's a group of 7 members of the community who have decided that they want to put some volunteer work towards supporting our business community in a variety of ways. Since COVID, we talked a little bit about other things they did, but since COVID, they have developed a sort of a response team. They got a subcommittee from EDC to work on helping businesses access grants and loan programs that have been coming through, mainly through the Fed, some through the state, We've been working closely with our partners at the Small Business Development Center in Santa Fe.
Hey, Dave, interrupt you for a second. With respect to the assistance financially with loans, can you identify for the listeners where they can access that easily now?
That's great. So the town has been maintaining a pretty comprehensive COVID-19 information page. If you go to the town website, which is www.townofsananselmo.org, right in the middle of the front page, we've placed a coronavirus sort of button. You can't miss it. It's the first thing you see. You click through to that and you get to our resources page, and that has resources not only on business support, but a bunch of other items that have been divided into categories. And you can pick through all of the different links. We have all the current state and federal assistance links on there.
So Dave, how do people identify the link that will take them directly to financial assistance?
So there's when you pull up our homepage, the first thing you'll see the masthead, and right in the
I got that, Dave. I got that.
Okay.
I got that. We've already clicked through, and we're on the next page where there's a bunch of content.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
Within all that content, so it's easier for people to access it. Tell them
Sure.
how directly they find it.
Sure. On that page, you'll see a series of pictures, and there's a business link picture. You click through that, and that's where. Thank you, Ford. That's where all the information is contained on our COVID resources page. So there's Sean right now. So that's our homepage. If you click through the COVID click link there, and
There we
you'll
go.
down, and if you scroll down there, you'll see businesses as the very first.
Yeah.
And there are all of the different links that will get you to a number of different resources.
And the different resource choices are at the bar in the middle at the bottom, right?
Yeah, the green bars, exactly.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Good job.
Thanks, Sean. Way to
ahead.
go. Thank you. And thank you for helping get a direct link to those things. So the EDC has been working with that. They've also just pivoted in the last week towards getting ready for the May 18th the business curbside delivery change to the health order. If you didn't know, starting yesterday, businesses that are non-essential can actually do business by people ordering goods through them, not going in the store quite yet, but ordering goods, and those goods can be picked up in front of each store, and arrangements can be made in those ways. So to prepare for that, the EDC set up a number of posters that look very similar. The main one says "Open for Business," and it's got a "Support our local merchants" message and the town's logo. And I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing a number of them. Others say "Wear your mask," and there's 3 or 4 different ones that business had the choice to use and put up in their windows. And it's just a way to have a consistent look and feel to denote who is actually open and doing business. And if you come downtown, you'll see them, and it's pretty obvious who's actually up and running. So I wanted to give a shout out to both Michael Schwab, who did the design of our town branding, which is used on all of this, and also to Rich Burns, who's on the EDC. He actually produced the posters and helped us with printing and everything. So that's a great effort. And then the last effort is what we're calling the Small Business Relief Fund. We're just starting to try and put together with the Chamber of Commerce a fund that will eventually get to the point where we can offer small mini grants to local businesses. It's just getting underway. You'll see it most likely in our newsletter after next week. We're hoping to raise enough to get some money in the hands of our small businesses. These are really for the businesses with 10 and under employees. And you've probably heard about it, other towns doing it. So the Chamber is working with the town to get that underway. And speaking of signage, I just wanted to point out, we haven't really talked about it, but a couple of years ago when the branding came out from the town, we got our new logo, the town approved a signage and wayfinding program. And you've seen a little bit of this come up. You've seen in our concrete, we call them bunkers, outside of the bus station, at the hub, and over by Wells Fargo, we have our new logo in there. you've seen a couple of big concrete monoliths put in at the entrance of our town, coming in from Santa Fe and coming in from Ross. Those are actually going to be welcome signs. It's going to say the town of San Selmo in metal letters, and it's going to have Sugarfoot above it.
This
And
Thursday.
on Thursday? Oh, that's
Yeah.
exciting. And finally, we're going to have a number of sort of wayfinding directional signs. We took down the 50-year-old Caltrans green signs that pointed you going different directions, and Michael Schwab has designed us some beautiful ones. And that was another effort that came through the Economic Development Committee. So, add to that this beautiful new median we have. We're, in the middle of all this, we're hopefully making some positive progress.
No, we definitely are. And Dave, sometime, well, as this thing unfolds today, grab one of those signs so you can put it up on the screen that people can see what they look like.
Great. I'm going to turn it back to you while I go grab one.
All right, sounds good. So now I want to introduce Sean Condry, our Public Works Director. Sean and I actually have kind of a rich history. I'm sure all of you know about the conflict that I had for many, many years with the town about the legality of actually where I'm broadcasting from right now, which is the first floor of my building in San Anselmo. So Sean and I initially were not on the same side of things, but subsequently we're able to iron out our differences professionally and become much better friends personally. So it's with appreciation and pride for somebody. Also, Sean, he works really hard. Sometimes you have to be patient with him because he gets a lot of pressure and he can be a little bit frustrated, like we all can. But overall, he works really hard and is responsive and gives straight answers. And then always, since I'm the mayor, if you're frustrated with anybody, the buck stops with me. So feel free to let me know. So with that, I'll hand it over to Public Works Director Sean Condry for a report on things that I'm sure you're interested in. It's all yours, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello to everybody in Zoom land. Right now, over the last, 8 weeks, we've been dealing with COVID-19 and its impact to the town. And one of the big things that's been going on for the first 6 weeks of that almost, we shut down construction, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. But during that whole time, the town since 2017 has actually been digital in terms of permit processing. So we've actually been fully functional in terms of processing permits and doing inspections that for projects that can be ongoing. But over
Sean,
the last,
up to you for a second.
yeah.
I know that when you're talking about how construction was shut down during the shelter-in-place period, I know there are people, and they may be watching right now, whose projects were shut down that were frustrated about that. Perhaps you could speak directly to what their status is and what they have to look forward to in the near term.
So actually, as of about maybe 2.5 weeks ago, we started, all existing permanent projects could start up about 2 weeks ago. And so that was, we sent out an email, a mass mailer to about 500 permits, telling them that they could actually start work again. And then anybody who had applied for a permit that was actually probably already gone through the process, but pending an actual permit because of the COVID-19 order, those projects were allowed to start about a week ago. So as we speak and sit here, all construction is a go. And one of the things though that we get questions a lot lately is about, isn't the office shut down, or how do we get a permit? And so actually, I'm going to just share my screen really quick. And
that's what you're addressing now about things being digital, right? Is that
yes.
There's an opportunity, even though the office may not be open, it doesn't mean that the town is closed for business. And you're going to describe how people can access and get response in the context of building and construction, right?
Correct, yes. I'm going to show how to access through the Town of San Anselmo website, how you get to the permit center and where you can find information just really quickly.
Great.
And I'll share my screen right now. Let's see if I can do it again. So here's the town main webpage, and it's townofsananselmo.org up in the corner here. And
Right.
if you see down here, it says permits.
Yes.
If you click on permits, you'll go right to our webpage, and then it explains what's going on with the virus. It actually has a link to the order. And then when, here it says no new permits will be issued until after May 15th. Well, we're past May 15th. We actually started about a week before that because things were going really smoothly. We originally were just trying to have a soft start to existing permits, and then we went exterior, and then all new permits. And things are going really well. We're getting a lot of emails, every day about this. But you can see here, small construction safety protocol. One of the big things that people need to understand is even though construction is allowed and you can get permits, there are guidelines in place that you have to have PPE, whether it's wearing masks, having a cleaning station, maintaining social distancing, even having a foreman who's a COVID-19 captain. So there are guidelines that you have to follow. And the town is even offering masks to contractors who don't have masks. We're giving them masks at our cost if they want to get them to help keep things moving. So this is just the web page. It shows you here. You can click here to apply for a permit. Click here to apply to schedule an inspection. So pretty much this one page. It's only one click away once you get to the main web page of San Anselmo, and it gives you all the information you need to actually get into permits and to apply for them and move forward. As far as other construction in San Anselmo, right now we are getting ready to do our summer pavement projects. We're going to have Bolinas Avenue paving, most likely Morningside Meadowcroft area. Those are gearing up, going out to bid very as soon as we speak. I think the council already approved the town manager to sign for those projects once we get that moving. And then another big construction project or demolition project is Building Bridge 2, which the town has been working with the flood zone 9 or the county flood zone. And basically over the last couple weeks, that building has been completely demolished. We are looking at taking that building and hopeful that, along with something else I'll talk about, is creating an outdoor space for people to use, with picnic tables once the county relaxes the order and allows people
Hey,
to
Sean,
yeah.
let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, of course.
We, from the town side here, we've been talking for 20 minutes, which is a pretty long time. And if you could bookmark where you are and the things that you want to talk about, what I'd like to do is open it up to public questions now, and then we can go back to your presentation, or if during the course of what the content of a particular question suggests is stuff that you haven't talked about that would be appropriate to talk about. Let's do it then, because I don't want us to just go on and on. This is really a forum for people to be able to call in, and I think there are 14 people if we still have them all out there. And let's get to the people.
We have 32 people, and Carla's going to manage.
Wow.
Yeah, Carla's going to manage our guests. And so if you would like to speak, please raise your hand, and Carla will mention your name and unmute you.
And if there isn't anybody, we'll go back to Sean.
We have 2 raised hands right now, so I'm going to allow Roberta to talk.
Hi, Roberta. Oh, you got to unmute yourself. Uh-oh.
You should be able to click on something on your screen, Roberta, that unmutes yourself.
Yes.
There you go.
There she goes.
So
Good.
I'm going to let my other half, not my better half, Spencer Michaels, he has
Spencer.
a question. So,
Oh, hi, Roberta.
hi.
Hi, Roberta.
So we're sorry you can't see us.
Yeah, me too.
Where's your
No.
camera?
So is it okay if Spencer asks the question?
Of course.
Okay.
So here's what I'm curious about. I'm interested in the lines of authority. I realize that Storage Park is closed to parking. They've also decided not to let anybody park on the street near Storage Park. I don't understand why, number one, and I don't understand who has the authority to make that decision.
Dave, you want me to take that or you want?
You could take
Let me,
it. I can
before,
talk.
Ed, let me just, I just want to clarify a little bit so that I clearly understand what Spencer Michael's question is. And so Spencer, is what you're saying is that how did the decision get made that that cars from outside of the neighborhood at Sorge Park were prohibited from parking there, and who made that decision and what gave them the right to do so? Does that summarize the gist of your question?
Exactly what I said, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, and you can fill in, Dave, or if
Okay.
you want, but I was going to say the order basically stated that they didn't want people driving out of their neighborhoods into other neighborhoods during COVID-19. And so that was part of the order to basically shut down open spaces and parks. It's been somewhat relaxed in the last few days. As far as the authority within our town code, the authority is given to both the police and public works to put in signage in relation to any existing laws or creating laws as it pertains to parking is within the town code. And the reason for this was basically to try and prevent people from leaving their homes and to make sure that we stick to the important part of the order is to shelter in place and not, go out and potentially spread the virus. But then Dave, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think
Actually, let me add a little bit, because let me go to the, how we get the right to do that. And so the original shelter in place order originated out of the County Marin, I think about March 16, March 17, around there. And so because of the risk of illness and death that the virus prevented and the inability to effectively take action to impede it, the best way to impede it was by preventing people from having a lot of contact with one another. That implicates a lot of constitutional rights. That implicates a constitutional right to free speech. It implicates a constitutional right to freedom of assembly. It implicates a constitutional right to freedom of travel. All of those are protected rights. So, why? What gives local government the juice to make that determination? And what does is that our job as local public officials is to act in furtherance of the health, safety, and welfare of citizens. That's called the exercise of the police power. And always there's a tension between police power, the exercise of police power authority, and constitutionally protected individual rights. And generally the way the courts have managed those things, and I'm not saying necessarily, although personally I believe we've managed it correctly, some court may ultimately determine it wasn't constitutional, is that there's the individual rights and exercise of police power exist in tension and oftentimes conflict. And so the exercise of the police power has got to be most narrowly defined and construed so as to protect and vindicate the values it's seeking to further, which here is the provision or the prevention of death and destruction, while not going into and invading constitutionally protected areas unnecessarily. And so that's really where the authority comes from. So ultimately, it comes from the Constitution, it comes from the separation of powers, it comes from the role of local government, it impacts the individual rights that are protected by the Constitution, and ultimately there's a balancing that happens between those two different sources of authority. So that's how we get to make the decision. Does that answer the question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on a more basic level, I appreciate the constitutional interpretation. And there's a good article in the New York Times today by Floyd Abrams, by the way, that deals with that particular question. But did any policeman or any city councilman ever walk the trail from Sworage Park up into the hills and see how
Yes,
many people are there?
I have.
Like
I'm in the
there's
hills almost every day, so I've really seen what what I saw before there was the shutdown of people coming to local parks who didn't live proximal to those parks was an unbelievable invasion. I mean, people would drive long distances and load up parking in order to get access. And what was happening was that, particularly with respect to where they were parking their cars and then congregating to go and get access, was that there was a lot of contact. And so as what happened here in the town, so the order came down from the county, and then we adopted, the town council unanimously adopted an ordinance saying that, yes, we're going to enforce these rules that the county has promulgated, and we're going to use our staff first to warn people about what the problem is. And then if people don't get a clue and don't heed the warning, we'll use the police in order to really impose what the restrictions are, and with penalties of they're a misdemeanor. It could be an infraction or a misdemeanor offense. So
Ford, could I know that David is probably trying to get other people to get a turn, and they'll start hating the Michaels, so or Mr. Green. But I just want to interrupt one thing, and then I'll shut up. I think you can't please everybody or serve everyone, but the irony is people like Spencer and me, who are older adults but in fairly good shape, don't go all the way from Calumet up to Sworage. It's a little too much.
right.
And we live in the neighborhood, but not on San Francisco Boulevard. So we can't go unless, well, Spencer cheated and parked one day. I didn't go with him because I don't like to cheat. But that's the problem. Or people who ride bicycles, and we don't. So it wasn't just excluding out of San Anselmo. It was excluding a lot of us who are not able to access that without a car.
And that's really important, Roberta, and a completely legitimate concern. And if I have my way, there would be a more precise detailing of what the regulations are, so as to provide auto access for older people such as yourself to be able to use parks that are in your own town, in own territory. You're not the only person from whom I've heard that concern and complaint, and I think it's legitimate and something we ought to address, and I thank you for raising it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more raised hand. And I'm going to allow Linda Kenton to talk.
After she demutes herself.
Oh, I actually didn't have any. I was playing around with the lowering the hand and the raising the hand in this format. So I apologize for the confusion that I caused. But hello, everybody. This is going really well. And thank you for doing it.
So Linda, you were just screwing around and you got inadvertently called on as a result?
Exactly. Yeah. Because this screen is different from the other screens that I'm used to. And so, you know, it says lower hand, raise hand. So I was just playing with that because most of the other meetings I attend don't have that. So I got caught.
That's great. Well, for those people out there, and as Sean says, in Zoom land, who don't know who Linda Kenton is, she is our wonderful and very capable librarian and assistant town manager who really comes up with all kinds of creative, thoughtful, caring, effective, and useful ideas that makes our Carnegie Library really be kind of both the heart and the brain of our town. So that's who Linda is. And I'm glad you're joining us, Linda.
Well, thank you.
So we don't have anybody else with raised hands right now?
We don't, but we have one Q&A question
Okay.
that came in, and it's from Jane Hall. And she says, thanks to you all for doing this. And she wants to know if there's plans for any changes to Madrone, Nokomis, and other bridges. And then the secondary question is, how does Army Corps decision to remove itself from Ross Valley affect San Anselmo's plans?
That's yours, Sean.
Yeah, I can answer some of it, maybe not all of it. But so the Nokomis and Madrone Bridge, they are scheduled to be removed probably in about 2 years. We're in the environmental stage right now, a little bit past the 30% design level. We went through a whole community process with the pop-up.
So Sean, let me interrupt you for a second. Part of what happens, being in professions and public life is you learn a language that other people don't necessarily. And so when you say the environmental stage, could you describe in a little more detail what that means?
So we have to go through an environmental impact study basically to see what impacts the removal and replacement of the bridges have on the environment in terms of, there's one called the California Environmental Quality Act, and then
Right.
there's the national, there's NEPA, and I'm forgetting the acronym now, but it's the federal level.
Oh, Environmental Protection Act.
Thank you. I go by the acronyms now. That's all I can remember.
I know it makes it even worse.
Yes, I know. And I hate acronyms too. But basically, it's to look at the impacts of the bridges, both on the creeks, the environment around them, the neighborhoods, from all different levels and angles. And so that's where we're at right now, making sure that the impacts from them you can mitigate them either by doing creek improvements or putting other things in place. Once that process gets done, we will go to get closer to the final design and then come back to the community showing what we're going to do at the pop-ups and all the other meetings. Pretty much what we got out of it from the community was they want to see bridges that look almost identical that's there. So which is called a Texas style rail with the lights, putting the lights back in that are now gone. The bridges will be higher up and allow more water to flow through them. The bridges are part of a 10-year work plan for a 25-year level of flood control, which that sounds kind of weird to say it that way, but the 25-year level flood event is actually 80% of the 100-year flood. And so it actually can have a big impact in terms of reducing the amount of water that floods. As far as the Army Corps, that is much further downstream. It doesn't really impact us up at the Nokomis Madrone area. But I would let the county answer that question for the Army Corps.
I hope that wasn't the most important part of the writers in inquiry.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that we have, San Anselmo is ground zero for a lot of flood control. I mean, we have at least four bridges: Nokomis, Madrone, Center, and the Bridge Street Bridge. We have Building Bridge 2, which the building itself just got removed. And that's slated for demolition next summer, the actual foundation and slab that causes flooding. And that building in and of itself reduces flooding to 400 or 500 structures.
Sean, let me interrupt you here for a second and just explain a little further what you're talking about. So number one, when we use the term Building Bridge 2, that's referring to the building where the Lepart restaurant used to be, I think, the optometrist and real estate office. It does not include Michael Feldman's Art Shack.
That's correct.
So what the problem with that area is that engineers have determined that the bore, meaning the hole, that the way that building is, it's actually built over the creek. There's a concrete edifice that goes over the creek, and the bore, the hole in that edifice, is pretty small. And so what happens when the creek starts flooding, gets higher up into higher volumes, is that the bore is too small to be able to process all the water going through. And that's why as part of this flood control stuff, what's called Building Bridge 2 has got to go. Because we're all shut down in the COVID time anyway, what has been done is, that's my phone, sorry about that, is to demolish the building that sits on top of the concrete, but the concrete itself is not going to be demolished until I think next summer, until the summer of 21, right, Sean?
That's correct. And actually, what I'll do, Ford, because this kind of leads where I left off before, I'm going to share a picture of the building. Here's the building gone right here. And the hope is to take this space, you know, as COVID-19 relaxes, and create an outdoor space with picnic tables and a few umbrellas and plants over, you know, sometime hopefully in June, maybe mid-June to end of June.
Oh, that'd be super nice. So I can't tell from this view because the creek line is to the left and out of view. Is the surface sufficiently consistent? It looks like it is, so that it'll support that kind of new use.
Yeah, well, we have some surprises. There's a great area that was part of the, you know, frontage that's already great for picnic tables, but the other area that's more undulating, we're looking at doing, I could spill the beans maybe, wood chips and a few other things to make it more usable.
Great.
And so that's, you know, we're working fast and furious. The building's gone and we're hoping to get this up and running in the next, you know, few weeks. And it'll depend on the order in terms of usage. And I could go on into the next subject, which was San Anselmo Avenue, if you'd like, or I can stop.
Sure,
here.
no, that's a great idea. Why don't you do that?
Okay, so
Sean, if you just let me bump in really quick, there is another Q&A, and it kind of ties into what you're about to talk about.
okay,
This is from Kathleen, and it says, hello, what thoughts does the town have for living with COVID and moving more businesses outdoors, like closing San Anselmo Avenue and making more retail and restaurants available outdoors? So with that, I'll let you go.
that's perfect. That's a perfect segue. So right now, the town of
See
San
how heads up and attentive our town staff is? They're awesome.
I love that. So the town of San Anselmo is working on a committee with other jurisdictions right now, looking at coming up with guidelines and to provide, you know, more outdoor space for restaurants and merchants. And there's kind of three or four different facets. One is looking at, you know, shutting down avenue, like San Anselmo Avenue or streets in local jurisdictions throughout Marin County, and providing a space for businesses to set up outside. Another avenue is to look at providing a fast tracking process if someone really wants to look at doing a parklet or something like a parklet. Also looking at taking spaces such as Building Bridge 2 or 634 through 636 San Anselmo Avenue, and taking existing town spaces and providing more open space for restaurants or merchants to use.
Sean, can you describe in a way that people can recognize it, what 634 to 636 San Anselmo Avenue is?
Yeah, so it's actually the part of the town that we're looking at shutting the avenue down is between San Anselmo Avenue, between Tunstead and Tamalpais, and 634 through 636, as you described earlier, Ford, was Lepart.
Got it.
Yeah, and so that is immediately adjacent to that area, and it's about 6,000 square feet of space. And in a way, it's kind of, for COVID-19, perfect timing if things go well, that we can actually utilize it to help the downtown businesses. And we see the town providing this space, the avenue, and maybe like I like to think of a fast track process if someone wants to do a parklet coming up even with a boilerplate design and a simple permit process. There is a fourth option, which is, you know, can we allow private parking lots to set something up? And so the town's working on all of this, and Dave can add in if he wants to go over some other things we're looking at.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that, you know, we hope to engender is, besides having the restaurants on the avenue and potentially some restaurants off the avenue, having kind of dining areas. We'd love to, you know, have the merchants be, because we all expect a bit of a change once June 1st, the new order comes out, which we'll get next Friday. really kind of have the opportunity from Friday night to Sunday night to have more of almost like a farmer's market feel with outdoor restaurants and families hanging out. But we need to do that all with in mind of keeping everybody safe and separated. So there's this new layer that we have to deal with. But I think that we're working with a contingency of 4 towns to try to work out all the regulations around this. Sean has actually become one of the leaders among that working group. So just so everybody knows, there's a lot of diligence being put into the planning around making sure it's safe.
And Dave, what are the towns?
What's that?
What are the
Mill Valley, Novato, Fairfax, and us. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think Larkspur I thought was in there too.
Oh, Larkspur. I didn't think they were going to do it. Okay.
Okay.
Something that and further along what you're talking about, you two guys are talking about providing outside areas where people can eat and people can congregate, and at the same time comply with COVID sensitive restrictions. Take a look at the towns of Carmel, Boulder, and Tel Aviv in Israel. I understand from one of our citizens and a buddy of mine, Warren Karlenzig, that they're involved in doing the kind of thing that we're talking about. So we may be able to pick up some ideas that have already been thought through without having to reinvent the wheel by taking a look and seeing what those municipalities, how they're approaching it.
Great, thanks, Warren.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff going on out there.
Yep, exactly.
So
So
we're looking at just like another great place for outdoor is Akureyri, Iceland, which is I see the avenue looking at that. So
Yeah. I mean, I think, people in the Ross Valley, as I said at the outset, we have very, very smart, very capable, mindful, aware, good people. Everybody's struggling with this thing. Everybody's struggling with the isolation. Some people are getting depressed and having a hard time. So if San Anselmo can be an innovator in figuring out how to do new COVID safe, improve COVID safe human connections, that's awesome.
exactly. I wanted to point out we have another comment. It's from my 8th grade teacher, Ruth Hicks. And she is saying, she's asking, are we going to provide noodle hats so people will be practicing safe distancing? Well, Ruth, we'll look into that. I'm sure we worked on noodle hats in your class. So thank you for that. And Jane Hall wanted to express her appreciation for what she's calling a wonderful open time.
Great. Well, that makes me, I'm so glad. And we're going to be doing, how often are we going to do this? Every couple of weeks, right?
Every 2 weeks. Yeah.
And it'll be every other week. So not next Wednesday. It'll be in the weeks where there are not town council meetings for the most part.
Right. I wanted to also just sort of quickly, because in the shadows of this open time forum is our town clerk, Carla Kakmar. And Carla is, probably one of our real nerve centers. She kind of helped set these things up and does so much work that is so appreciated by all of us, but a little bit invisible to the public. So Carla, you're a dear right now, but you're a dear for doing all this.
Not only that, Carla is able to do it because she doesn't have the more dinosaur-like qualities others of us have, and has the competence to be able to effectively manipulate electronics. And then I know that she also is just a mean cook in the dessert oven.
Yeah, she is. Actually, food in general.
She's great in the kitchen. Well, thank you, Carla, again. So
I guess we were going to go until 5:30. It's 5:46 now. Do you think this is a good time to stop? Is there more stuff, Sean, that you would like to hit before we conclude?
No, I think that's it. I would just like, if anybody has, whether it's construction questions or permit questions, you can please email me or email permits. We are here and functioning. Some people think we've been closed, but we are here and we're working.
Oh, you know what, Sean? Actually, I just thought of something. Let me ask you before you go. So there's with the so up and coming, we're going to have a pretty good fire season. It's going to be pretty dry so far. 2020 is the hottest year yet in the era, compounding COVID of climate change. And we don't have typhoons here, but we do have fires. And one of the things that the voters did was to authorize money to be spent to start a joint powers authority, basically run by the county fire chief and San Anselmo fire chief, Jason Weber, to do vegetation management. And so part of vegetation management involves tree trimming and sometimes tree cutting down. And that can really be a sensitive thing in town, because we all love our trees a lot. Don't want them unnecessarily cut down, but there's more tensions in those values of modern society. So Sean, maybe you could talk a little bit about the process involving tree cutting, tree pruning, and tell people if they think that a tree is being improperly taken down, what they can do about it.
So and I can talk a little bit about the fire and PG&E if you want. I was going to say that for the council meeting on Tuesday night, but there's a lot going on with that. So for the tree process, if you do see somebody trimming a tree, if it's a street tree, if you trim a tree more than 25% in San Anselmo, if it's a street tree or a heritage tree, and this is where it gets a little bit convoluted, but a heritage tree is any tree over 22 inches in diameter at 4.5 feet in height, except for a plum, a privet, acacia, a Monterey pine, and a eucalyptus. But if you see someone trimming a tree that is protected, which are most trees that are over 22 inches in diameter, then you can either if they seem to be being overly aggressive, if it's during the week, you can email or call the Public Works and Building Department. You can also call the police if you had to, if it was during the weekend, who will immediately notify Public Works and will respond, and will send out code enforcement or myself. We respond to tree stuff all the time. It gets a little bit, sometimes there's tree disputes between properties. In theory, if a tree branch hangs over your property, you have the right to cut it, but you can't aesthetically or structurally harm the tree either. Dave's showing his signs. So, but
you're distracting.
Yeah.
Wait till Sean's done.
It's hard to watching him. It's like a dance over there,
Sorry, Sean.
But I want to let everybody know, because you said this before, this is important. Right now, the fire department over the last few months has been going and clearing pathways as we speak along, the hills to provide an egress path during an emergency fire event or other event. PG&E has been out there trimming trees. With Measure C, as you mentioned, that passed, that there's about $1 million that comes towards San Anselmo, $180,000 directly that will be used for fire abatement in terms of trimming trees back. PG&E actually just contacted the town, and we're looking at also providing PSPS community centers where they're going to help maybe at Town Hall or Isabel Cook. It's still to be worked on. So there's a lot going on. The goats, as we speak, are eating up in the hills. So there's a lot of stuff in preparation, hopefully for something that won't come, but it sounds like we're getting better prepared than we ever have for potential fires or PSPS.
Before we close here, I was just looking at, doing a Linda and looking at the Q&A thing here on my Zoom sheet, and there's some questions that we haven't addressed, and there's a comment also. So let's deal with those.
Okay.
One was from Roberta Michaels, with whom we spoke initially, and what she asked was what trails are open with parking? When will parking restrictions end? So could you directly just respond to those two questions again, if you haven't already?
I can respond to the Roberta question. So the only two trailheads that we have resident parking only restrictions on at this point are Sorich and Tomahawk. And
okay.
we're working closely with the CMPA. We've had issues with overcrowding at those. It's subsided. There's also a couple in the other two towns, and we are planning on reopening and taking down the resident only signs on Tuesday after the Memorial Day weekend. And the neighbors, yeah, on Tuesday. So those will be coming down.
Okay, good. That's a good, clean, specific answer.
And for though, when she asked this question, I want to let her know, if she doesn't know, there are two new trails, there's the Memorial Ridge Trail, which you can access right behind the Red Hill Shopping Center from the batting cages. And then there's the Red Hill Trail, which is behind. So if she doesn't know about those trails, they're pretty close to Calumet.
Let me also just ask, what's the status of Memorial Park?
It's open.
Memorial Park is open, yeah. It opened up, the new parks order kicked in yesterday as well, so we opened those parking lots. I'm gonna go to Sarah Robinson's comment, which I really love. Sarah is our incredible volunteer helping lead the age-friendly effort. Part of what they're doing is they've pulled together a huge group of volunteers that wanna kind of help out with that. And she's recommending, Sean, that we maybe look at tapping into those for folks who might be able to help with the weekend events. I know we're concerned about staffing those. So that, Sarah, that's a great idea, and I will.
Dave, let me just read Sarah's comment so that the people who are listening can get the entire picture.
Okay.
It reads, as you are contemplating setting this outdoor arrangement, can you consider using our volunteer corps developed during COVID to assist in helping the businesses and the town in creating the space and atmosphere? So that was what Sean talked about earlier, and the answer to that's clearly yes. Certainly as to creating the space, and I think also using the volunteer corps. And then she goes on and says, making this a whole community effort would be a memorable way of bringing everybody together again, using safety precautions a given.
Yeah.
So that's just a very, very thoughtful, very appropriate comment. I wanted to give it the respect of reading it. I think we've already answered it. We don't have to answer it any further.
Right.
Ruth Hicks asks, my harping question, are you going to do anything on our narrow streets to restrict parking to one side only? Have fun with this, Sean.
We are constantly working on this. We actually have a few streets that we've already done meandering red curb or red curb on one side. It is a very difficult process in terms of making sure we provide emergency vehicle access, even for garbage trucks. But we are continually working on this and trying to come up with a process. It's complicated because we're trying to make sure that we don't take away parking, but also provide emergency vehicle access.
I know. And then one of the real difficulties of San Anselmo, particularly up in the hills, is that the roads are very, very narrow and there's not enough room for everybody anyway. So parking's like dogs and like flooding can raise a lot of grief. And it's an ongoing balance and an ongoing process. Amy Flynn makes a comment and she says, the new median on Red Hill turned out so beautifully. It is so well done, a great choice of plants and hardscape. I'd like to thank everybody involved, including, of course, the anonymous donor. It has come up in many conversations during this time as a real morale booster. And I thank you so much for that, Amy. I completely agree. Every time I go by there, and I mean, it's been wonderful the last couple of weeks with these bonus rains have just been fabulous for the plants there. The plant selections are great. And I personally have an investment in the plant selections because I lobbied like crazy for a South African plant that I love called the leucadendron. And there are a series of leucadendrons planted along that strip. As they grow up, you'll be able to recognize them because they're so distinct. And as I was looking at the planting scheme today, it is absolutely gorgeous. It's a great morale booster. And, you know, the elm trees were wonderful and traditional, but they couldn't last forever. And I don't think we could have had a better solution than what we've had here.
What I'd just like to add, it's my favorite project to date since I've been here. And it's buyer retention. It's one of the biggest buyer retention around, I think, so.
Yes, it is. So then I think how we'll close it out here with the final comment from Sarah Robinson, who says this is a terrific forum to not only build community investment in town affairs, but also to generate such goodwill and inclusion. Thank you. Boy, you write really well, Sarah. And then she continues and says, for your information, for those challenged by Zoom, you can reduce the information provided by Zoom to just the link and one phone number and clearly type the steps. Quote, join on your computer by clicking this link or call in on your phone on this number, close quote. Older adults and non-Zoom users find the extensive Zoom provided information a barrier to entry. I think that's great constructive criticism, and I'm sure that Carla was listening and that she will incorporate it for our next meeting that will occur not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that. It's near the beginning of June, might even be June 1st.
June 3rd.
3rd. And just, I want to thank Dave and Sean and Carla. This has been a great thing, and I think it was a good launch, and look forward to continuing it and getting to know all of you and having you get to know us better in a couple weeks. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.